We want to check in on our breaking news on the Eagle Creek fire and check in on those two new level 3 evacuations going on in Warrendale and Dodson. We have Multnomah County spokesperson for the Sheriff's Office, Chad Guidos, on the phone with us. Can you hear us, Chad?
Yes, I can.
Thanks for joining us. Can you talk and elaborate more on what's happening with the fire? Obviously, we just reported I-84 is closed down. Now these two new communities are under a mandatory evacuation. How close are the flames to the freeway?
The flames are very close to the freeway, certainly visible from right off the shoulder there. And so the fire's moved quickly. Some winds have shifted. It's obviously very dry out there, very warm, and so we knew the conditions were vulnerable, and it appears with the shift in winds, it's now moving quicker than we expected initially.
We're certainly used to this in the wintertime where I-84 will be closed down. How will this differ? Will there be signs up in Troutdale, say, that will allow people to get off and then turn back around so that they don't head out that way?
Yeah, so ODOT will ultimately be in charge of the highway closures. At this point, they have it closed down from mile marker 35 to mile marker 62. That'll be in all lanes, all directions. Of course, we'll be allowing for evacuations out of that area, so this will be a little bit different in that you'll still have some vehicle traffic as we try and evacuate these communities.
Now, did you guys have to go, I mean, door to door? We watched last night, you guys were going to warn people of kind of be ready. What happened late this afternoon? Is it kind of a reverse 911 system? How do you let these folks know that they need to leave?
It's a combination of resources. So yes, there's an opportunity for us to reach out via phone and contact residents through a notification process, but we also will go to door. That was the commitment to resources that we made yesterday, and we'll follow through on those to ensure we get everybody out that we can safely.
Okay. What's the biggest concern moving forward tonight? I mean, obviously we have a major freeway closed down. We had people trapped in there yesterday over the weekend. What are the biggest worries going forward?
Just how quickly we can get these areas evacuated. Again, the fire is moving fairly quickly at this point, and so we want to make sure that life safety is our priority, and so the evacuations really become our number one focus right now.
Wow. Is there a place that you're telling folks to head to right now if they're evacuated, and any estimates on how many households that is?
It's tough to say given who may have evacuated already, and so the exact number is difficult. We are opening a shelter at the Yoshida Event Center at Mount Hood Community College, and so we're asking all residents who evacuate to go there. It's important to note that is a place where we're able to co-locate not only people who are evacuated, but their pets as well.
How many people are fighting this fire, do you know right now, Chad, and what is the strategy moving forward? Is it spread out in different areas?
You know, those are details I don't have. I would have to refer to the U.S. Forest Service on those.
Okay. And as far as how many people do you know, as Nina mentioned a minute ago, with these evacuations, how many are in this situation with Dodson and also Warrendale? Again,
those are numbers that are difficult to know right now. And while we certainly know how many residents are there, you know, it's approximately 59 residents that we contacted yesterday and made the level 1 evacuations. There were several others who weren't home, and we left evacuation notices. And so that's what makes this a bit of a complex issue for us. Is that's why exactly we go through each house again to ensure that we're doing everything we can to evacuate those communities.
Okay, and I assume you guys are heading them kind of west toward Troutdale with this level 3 evacuation?
Yes, yeah, we'll work our way through those communities. At this point, it's just Dodson and Warrendale that are the focus.
All right.
Has there been any more on how this started?
That's under investigation by the Oregon State Police, so I'll have to refer to them for those details.
All right, scary stuff. Lieutenant Chad Guidos with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, thank you so much for checking in with us on that evacuation. Again, I-84 closed now in both directions. Past, what is it, Hood
Multnomah
River?
Falls. Basically,
Falls.
it's milepost 35 and then out east to Hood River. So it's just east of Multnomah Falls to Hood River. So
okay.
that's
so we have to fix that map because it does not start quite in Troutdale, but a little further
but that's
east.
probably where you'll be turned around, as we just heard there too. So keep that in mind as you're heading out. If you're heading east on 84 tonight, or west for that matter too, or have somebody coming west, know that it's going to be an issue tonight.
Alex Answer here. It is the 5th day of September in the year 2006. There is a lot of major things obviously taking place. Again, if you're listening live, give me a thumbs up on the audio. You have a number of images here as I take a deep get ready for this report. A very different report than, say, the last report that I did last night, as the situation that we are in as Americans is a lot more clear with a cascade of events. Now, this is fairly significant, hearing about I-84 being cut off or being shut down. And the proximity to Portland, Oregon, where these major fires are waging, and again, raging fires, not only in Oregon, but in California. Many people are describing the whole West Coast as being on fire, literally not everywhere, but a spread to likes to which we haven't seen at the same time as we deal with the obvious ongoing disaster, humanitarian crisis, the massive flooding in Houston. Here we have this iconic image of a fire that they say is mostly contained, but this is Los Angeles. And then, of course, I noticed someone else on social media saying, don't forget us in Montana. Okay, so we also have this information coming in with Hurricane Irma, which is now a Category 5 storm. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. Hurricane Irma strengthened over the Atlantic Ocean into an extremely dangerous Category 5 today on Tuesday. And it's threatening to batter the Caribbean and potentially Florida. And they're concerned about it going all the way up the Florida panhandle, over the land, entering at the tail tip, if you will, of Florida, the southern coastal tip. There's already evacuations in Miami. Water is flying off the shelf. Food is flying off the shelf, just like what we saw in Texas. There are other reports regarding gas stations. So we're seeing fires. We're literally seeing fire, flooding, a rise in earthquakes, and some of the meteorologists were projecting that a lot of the water would be dumped prior to Hurricane Irma hitting landfall, but it mostly being devastation by wind. An estimated, at the moment, 181 miles per hour. And so we are looking at the eye of the storm. There's also another hurricane right between Irma, but that's expected to go up the Atlantic and go back out to sea. I'm not going to be spending a great deal of time speculating on the man-made element to this, but it cannot be discounted, the weather war potential. But needless to say, many Americans are set right now to live the refugee experience. What I want to do for you now, I want to jump over to this new information regarding the sun. Now, you may not have heard about the crackling of sunspots recently, and this was an unexpected display of the aurora borealis over Norway in just recent days. I'll also remind you that there are other things that can cause geomagnetic storms other than coronal mass ejections hitting our Earth's magnetic field. And if you haven't read my 2009 report, Solar Flares in the Earth's Weakening Magnetic Field, I suggest that you do so, and I'll probably come back and go through key portions of that. I also have an updated PDF coming out in a few days once all my citations are finished and it's properly formatted. Thing is, a lot of people aren't connecting these events with these events, weather wars aside. But you also have to take into consideration of the potential for weather weapons to be used during particular periods in which the ionosphere is already heavily charged with electromagnetic energy from the sun. And so if you follow spaceweather.com and you read about the cracks in the Earth's magnetic field, and they open and close, open and close. And there's a period in which we get a burst of the solar wind. And so we're actually coming up on an impact in the next 24 hours or so. They're expecting it between the 6th and the 7th. Right now, it is the 5th of September. This potential X class solar flare, of which they rate a 25% chance, but even with the M class solar flare, with the weakening Earth's magnetic field and cracks in the ionosphere, we're that much more affected, and even as human beings biologically. So there needs to be consideration with regards to keeping it together. Again, we're dealing with this after the eclipse, which I believe has shown very strong signs that it affects human psychology, human behavior, as well as these weather patterns. Here we see an image, by the way, of the ash over Portland, as well as flooding in Texas. We also see the conditioning for people to base a survival plan around doing what the government tells them, going to evacuation centers. We look at the debt that this is going to cost, billions of dollars in damage in Texas, but it's well over 180, $200 billion in damage. And again, as all these events take place, North Korea tests underground the H bomb. And there are rumors of earthquakes caused in that region. And then people, all eyes on Donald Trump. What is Donald Trump going to do? Or is Donald Trump going to, and some people believe it's just the deep state and he's not responsible. Different opinions still waging. We're going to focus mostly on the natural disasters, but look at the conjunction of events. What if people actually had to evacuate the West Coast? Going back to that report about I-84 being cut off, Portland being a major city, growing exponentially, and these other areas growing exponentially. The idea of evacuation being a very serious issue. And the other thing that we, of course, should have a conversation about is the poor man's survival pack. Must have items for a flooding situation or some other kind of a situation to where a gas mask may not be within reach, but perhaps some sort of a mask of some kind that may be able to provide ventilation, thinking about things that somebody may need for a flood. But I've talked for years with regards to prepping for people to understand that if they're trying to evacuate at once with other people, the in that, the problem in that is a situation in which you have car after car after car stuck on a freeway or a road. It could be a flooding situation. It could be a fire. It could be something to that effect, to which people aren't actually able to get out of the city. So the question is, where are people to go in that type of a situation? Where are people to go? You think about a situation where people abandon their cars or things of that nature. And I'm actually going over to the stream to make sure we're live to kind of find out what's going on with this. And it looks like we are live, so I do have confirmation that we are live. And we have been live for some time, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this window. And go ahead and give me feedback on audio and video in each podcast, being that I'm off the grid using a very rationed satellite. And I will also make mention, here we have a chat room for anyone that would like to join topics. And again, give me a thumbs up if we are live and if the audio is streaming. A cascade of events. And how are these events affecting us spiritually? And there's also some buffering issues that I've gotten some reports on. And what I've noticed in the playback for some of these episodes is that the buffering issues aren't as apparent on the playback. So if you're experiencing some technical difficulties, most of the videos seem to be holding a fair, solid audio stream without breakup. So that's really, really critical to know that we're on the air and that there isn't any major breakup. And a lot of people are looking in the direction of climate change, but they're not necessarily looking in the direction of the sun. There are some books that people can read to educate themselves. There's Solar Rain by Mitch Petros. There's a few other books that I've referenced in past episodes. And Mitch Petros on Coast to Coast AM has pretty much detailed how this functions and how this operates. And see, it really makes common sense. It is common sense that we'll see an increase in solar activity and we have other things going on that we're going to see stronger, more powerful storms. So they're already rating this a Category 5. And we have an X-class solar flare that's going to be coming in the next 24 hours. And see where I'm at. I'm at 8,000 feet in elevation here in Colorado. And by the way, there are fires in Colorado. They've been pretty decent. Um, and are we getting audio? Do we have any viewers right now? Can anyone hear me on the air over YouTube? Because we do have issues like the stream dropping. There's just a lot of information to cover. But let's go over to Portland and cover that news really quickly. Okay, because they have an air advisory. They haven't seen this much ash falling in Portland since the period of my birth in 1980 when Mount St. Helens blew its top in May of 1980. I was born February 25th, 1980 at Good Samaritan Hospital in Portland, Oregon. And so this is really interesting. That was actually a solar maximum period. And there's actually a video that I'm going to be playing. And there shouldn't be any echo this time. I'm playing the video. Granted that, I wear headphones this time. But he was noting that even though we're in or going into is a grand solar minimum, we're seeing an increased level of activity from the sun. And when we go into a solar minimum, there's less solar flares, less interaction with our Earth's magnetic field. So what does that mean? That means we have a weakening Earth's magnetic field, more affected by the radiation, more affected by the cosmic rays. I had a discussion with, and thank you, Jay Bird. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that the net is working. And I wasn't doing these live streams, as you guys know, a couple of weeks ago. And so, yeah, I was thinking, how can I move things forward in my own life, focusing on these videos full time, not knowing where I'll be exactly economically in a month. But when we get there, we get there. But look at all the things that we're dealing with in our lives, the fires within, the civil unrest, the earth changes. And it really brings to, I don't think the end of the world is coming, but I've always believed that we would go through a massive transition. But I've seen a lot of people call the dates way in advance. And as we come up to 2020s, right? And I look at this map of the 2024 eclipse, there's going to be a lot more concerns about earthquakes and the Madrid fault. It's a very sensitive issue. And it's important that people understand that when we go in these periods where we're more affected by the solar flares, whether it's a maximum or, as I said just now, a minimum, to where there's less solar flares, but with that, we have a weakening Earth's magnetic field. So if the sun decides to wake up and have a disco party, and I do believe that the sun is conscious. I don't want to go too far off topic, but I don't think this is an accident. And yes, there's the potential for man-made disasters. And I think that we've seen this in our lifetimes. But I don't believe that they're controlling everything. And I don't know that even a debate about that is the most important thing for us to be focused on right now. Again, that was a picture in the slideshow that came up again of Portland, Oregon with ash raining down. Look at that ominous sun and the ominous eclipse. Is this cyclical? Will things calm down in a few months? What kind of a winter are we going to have? You know, I never thought I would say that. I'm really looking forward to winter. But, you know, I can't play the video for you, but I can play the audio. And so I'm going to take a drink of water. We're going to continue this stream, especially if and I've got power and I should do more videos during the day. I also went to town yesterday and spent $10 on gasoline, which that seems to fill up the generator twice. So I guess that's maybe about 20 hours of runtime. Now that we're in September and I'm getting less sunlight, I'm going to start using the generator to bring you these off-the-grid newscasts. This is definitely a powerful time. I'm going to play this video. I'm not a big fan of the Planet X material. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means that I'm not impressed with a lot of the fake predictions, and I believe that the research regarding the solar influence over human consciousness is something that a lot of these internet conspiracy buffs choose to overlook. And so that's why I stick with what my soul is drawn to. And my soul has always been drawn to talk to you about the sun, not speculative planets and bodies. My soul has always been drawn to you to talk to you about the sun or to people and to create this body of information. And what I feel I'm seeing is the things that I've written about and talked about, the conjunction of events, as we start really experiencing the effects of the changes in the sun. So this is from Planet X News. And he seems to have some decent information and has been watching the sun very closely and the increase in earthquakes and the path of Hurricane Irma. So give me a thumbs up if the audio stream is coming through loud and clear. It'll just take a moment.
Excessively high. Now, on this model, folks, this is going to show you the sunspots that have been turning towards Earth. We've had a lot of activity going on under the sun, and they say that we're going into this grand solar minimum when things should actually be calming down, but they seem to be heating up, and they seem to be progressing. I haven't mentioned a lot about Planet X lately, even though I've had some evidence come in, folks. But I'm trying to get YouTube to kind of ease their constraints on me, slow down their censorship, maybe concentrate on someone else. But there is so much going on right now in the world with these hurricanes, you really have to stay on top of the information. But you can see these sunspots. This is a very, very large sunspot, 2674. But where the CME came from today, folks, it came from the smaller sunspot, which was actually more Earth-facing and below the equator. And that's just about where Earth sits. And there's the culprit right there. That's where the CME came from. So we're going to go ahead and get out of there, and we're going to take a look at the magnetopause. Now, right now, there's not too much going on. I mean, you can see some distortion, some fluctuation, and that was earlier in the day on September 4th. I'm going to show you what's going to be occurring in the days to come. And it's going to be pretty sketchy over the course of the next week. Now, solar wind speed has been fluctuating also. This is where I picked up the solar wind speed. If you watch up here, you'll see it clock in at a little over 1,000 kilometers per second. It was about 1,025. That's equivalent to just over 2.2 million miles per hour. you're going to see these big fluctuations coming in from about 550 kilometers per second to well over 1,000 kilometers per second. And you can see by the coloration these pulses coming in from this solar wind and the coronal hole energy coming from the sun. So here is the magnetosphere. Again, we haven't seen too much going on, but we definitely have seen some anomalies, some interaction with what's happening right now. I believe probably, folks, over the next 8 to 12 hours, things are going to get a little bit worse. This is definitely going to induce more earthquake activity and higher radiation levels. There's just no doubt about it. It is on the way. And I would say within the next 24 hours, we're going to be talking about it. Possibly even before then. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the solar wind model.
Okay, so we may not be getting any audio, and I appreciate feedback from those that are listening so I know what the situation is as I get to know the software more and more. So he's basically describing what we're looking at with regards to the potential for an X-class solar flare, the crackling on the sun. Visit spaceweather.com to get, the official admission, of course, of what's going on. But he also mentioned that a lot of devices used for monitoring the sun, for example, don't seem to be working. Whether that's true or not true, I don't know. But going back again to something really, really important, to have the basics on hand. And I'll tell you that I don't necessarily have the basics on hand. I don't necessarily have a mask, but of course, I suppose we can tie something, a shirt to our face in the event of a fire, but that's only going to work so well. Thinking about my shed here in Colorado, the potential for fires in the future, there's just been a lot of that taking place in general.
Shaded area.
And it also seems that,
That's
tell
gonna
me
be
if you're
from-
getting audio now. If you're getting audio now from the video, I can see potentially why I didn't have it before and why I have it now.
Solar wind stream through the 10th, the 11th, and there is more energy trailing behind. So you can possibly expect to see more intensity on the 12th and the 13th, possibly even the 14th. If you just scroll up here, the plasma density, you can see from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. On the 6th, it starts to rise, and it's a steady rise, and it peaks out on September 9th. So there is definitely a lot to watch. We're going to go ahead and bring up the SOHO coronagraph C2, and we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to step through this so you can see this coronal mass ejection as it occurred. And this was on September 4th at 1900 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and start stepping through here. And you can see the coronal mass ejection. It's already happening. It's already forming. And folks, this is directly facing the Earth. I mean, this is like a headshot. So let's go ahead and progress through this. Now, as we get into September 5th, and this is all in UTC time, so it's about 4 hours ahead of me here on the East Coast. But what I want you to see is it's continuing to vent right after the CME. So that's even more energy that we'll be expecting in the days to come. So folks, not only do we have to deal with Hurricane Irma and its warpath towards the state of Florida, we also have a lot of space weather to deal with. And the space weather can be just as devastating, but covering the entire globe. Just a few hours ago, we walked right into a geomagnetic storm. Now that's going to cause big problems with internet access, radio communication, cellular communication, you name it. We have a lot going on, folks. So much information coming from so many different avenues. I mean, it's literally a 24-hour-a-day job just trying to keep up on what's happening around the globe. Volcanic activity? Can't leave the volcanoes out, folks. We're going to just step over here to volcano discovery real quick.